Welcome to the Evolve Podcast, a podcast about disrupting your life to spark new evolution. Evolve your body, evolve your mind, evolve your soul, and evolve your tribe. And now it's time to disrupt. And with that, folks, we want to welcome you to another episode of the Evolve Podcast. Joining me in Oberlin, Ohio is the most interesting man that I know. There'll be Myles Riley. Welcome, Myles.
I think the most interesting man that we're going to get to know is our guest.
I couldn't agree more. And in the mountains of Utah, I am Steve Cutler. Guys, we are really excited today. We've got Justin Harris, who is the owner of a few different companies, but he's the owner and customized training and performance nutrition company. And Justin, correct me on this. Toponin Nutrition?
You're about the only one who's ever said it correctly. Yep, Toponin. Yep.
Toponin Nutrition. I love that name. We got to talk a little bit more about that.
Yep.
Justin is a coach and a nutritionist in the fitness industry for nearly 20 years. But what makes Justin even more interesting is this guy holds an undergraduate degree in kinesiology and a master's degree in atomic physics. Justin, I think you're the first person we've had on the podcast that has a degree in atomic physics. That's pretty badass.
Yeah, it's a weird one, yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. I got to add something to this because it fits in where I am. So I'm in Oberlin, Ohio at Oberlin College. And, everybody knows it's the super liberal college and this and that. But the most interesting thing about Oberlin College is this. When you talk to the students, and I asked all of the students, what's your major? They always say things like, well, I'm studying kinesiology and atomic physics. So when I hear this about Justin, I'm just thinking, wow, he's like an Oberlin student with these like drastically, almost diametrically opposed majors and minors. So go ahead.
I went to a private liberal arts college, actually. So it's similar to like an Oberlin. So,
okay.
That's probably why it's so eclectic, because we're forced to have a pretty wide range of coursework.
Yeah. And I always find people like that fascinating.
Well, I think it's great when you got two really diametrically opposed interests, or if you have interest in many different areas. Now, Justin, you've been a top-level competitor in powerlifting, right? And you won 2004 Mr. Michigan, 2006 Junior USA Super Heavyweight Champion, and then in 2007 and 2008, you were the APF Michigan Powerlifting Champion, totaling elite in both competitions.
Mm-hmm.
So you've had quite the career in health and fitness. But I want to start. Tell our listeners a little bit about how somebody with a master's in atomic physics becomes a coach in health and fitness.
Well, it's really the reverse. How someone was a coach became because I went back to grad school later in life. So, well, my start in fitness, I guess, or weightlifting was, I was kind of just a nothing kid, like I wouldn't say I was like a nerd or like, I wasn't even that unique. I was like kind of just the middle of the road. No, I doubt you could take anyone in my middle school. They might not even know I existed, just kind of blah, which no one wants to be, everyone wants to excel or be special or something. And I just wasn't. I love sports. I was good at baseball because you could be good at that age and not be, large or strong or fast, really. But then I can't remember. Oh, actually, I think I watched like the 1988 or 1989 Arnold. It would have been 89 Arnold Classic was on like NBC or something. And I was like 8-year-old kid, and I was kind of mesmerized by it. And so I remember trying to draw those guys before bed. And from that point on, I was intrigued by weightlifting. And then what kind of got me into the whole thing was, I started working out, not knowing what I was doing, but I realized whatever I worked hard and whatever weight I was doing last week, this week I was able to do a little bit more. And then the next week I was able to do a little bit more. And it was like incredibly eye-opening for me, because I just thought, I don't think I ever really put much thought into it. But up until that point in my life, I thought, like if you were, the good basketball players, the good football players, you were just born how you were, and that was your lot in life, and that was it, and I realized like, well, I can, like elicit change, like a clear path. I want to get better or change how I am at something. You just work hard and it happens. And I never really mean, I think maybe a lot of kids appreciate that or learn that through school and grades and studying, but I never did for whatever reason. This is my first like introduction to, wow, I'm kind of in control of where my path in life. And it completely, it was like a rug pull, like curtain drawn, like two different lights. It was from that moment on, it was like, that was like the overriding thought in my life was, well, if I want to do something, I can. What's the path I need to take to get better or get good enough to be able to do it? It was really, really eye-opening. And so that's just kind of where it snowballed from there.
It's pretty fascinating when you think about weightlifting. I think that's one of the reasons why it becomes so addicting for most people, because as you just referenced, you can see the progress really on a week-by-week basis. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get stronger in every area each week, but you might be able to lift a couple more reps, or you might be able to lift 5 more pounds or 10 more pounds in each lift each time you go in, and it becomes extremely addicting.
Oh, yeah.
Which builds massive confidence. Talk a little bit about, as you went through this path, how did you develop confidence as you were increasing the weights that you were lifting?
Well, it was kind of like forced upon me, I think, because it was just a naturally kind of shy and maybe insecure. I think everyone who gets into the weightlifting has some insecurity on some level, you know, like the big, huge ripped jock who was stronger than everyone in ninth grade doesn't start working out. He's already the strongest kid in school, you know? So we all start from something like that. And it was, I think, kind of realizing, you know, because I never even started like on a football team until my senior year of high school. And then by my senior year, I was voted captain. You know, like it was really weird because my weightlifting path went from, you know, like puberty. My family's very big and I was a late bloomer. So I had puberty and weightlifting both hitting me like a freight train in 1 year, and I gained like 100 pounds. And I went from like, you know, like I went from the 140-pound junior who was, you know, not very good at football to the 240-pound senior who's the strongest kid in school and, you know, and really good at football. So just really, and that was really weird because it was hard viewing yourself, because now I was always like the nobody, not like necessarily the little kid, but just like certainly wasn't, you know, like I didn't stand out for being a big kid. I was always, you know, on the smaller side. And then all within 1 year, I was now the biggest kid in school, which was very weird because mentally I hadn't processed that yet. So like the confidence stuff, I think, just came from the fact that now, like I worked hard at this thing in the gym, and now when I did physical activity or I did other things, I was suddenly better than everyone, you know. And my brain was still viewing myself as the kid who, you know, should be second string, or it was hard to process. And so each new like interaction or each new big, you know, inflection point where like, you know, like early on in football season when you got to tackle people, when I now realize like, holy cow, these collisions used to feel a lot different when the guys were bigger than me. Now I'm bigger, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And it was more, you know, like the way people treat you and stuff, and you just kind of realize like, you know, I can kind of change, I can impact my life, I can dictate where my life goes, and the confidence kind of comes from that.
I also
It's
think
kind of a lagging thing, though, right?
yeah, Steve
Go
said
ahead,
something earlier. It was really interesting about, you know, you can see the results, and that gives you a certain type of momentum. But the other part that gives you momentum, I would think, is the fact that you now have this galvanizing thing that's galvanizing all of your attention. You know, it's like this narrowed focus. And, you know, when you're a kid, your brain and mind are all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And the sooner a kid can find this galvanizing thing that brings his emotional, psychological, and spiritual things together, and the focus is there, all of a sudden you really get momentum. And if you can see the results of what you're doing, wow, you're just a kid who's on his way.
Yeah, and that's a perfect way of putting it, because it kind of forces you to be all the things that, you know, like society decides a good human is, you know, like you're you know, you're a scatterbrained, disorganized kid. But now when this weight workout is incredibly important to you, and you have school and you have sports and you got a job and you have to fit this weight training in, suddenly you become like an expert organizer, you know, like you're keeping the calendars, you know, and things like that. Or, you know, like suddenly you like studying it used to seem like a big hassle, because you know, any free time you had, you used it to completely goof off, where now your free time is used for a purpose. And it's not hard for that to kind of translate to, well, I should have a purpose with other things I do.
Right. I got a 14-year-old who's going through that right now. He's got a job. He's a pretty powerful soccer player, and he's a straight A student. But when he got the job, it kind of threw everything out of whack. And his mother and I used to sit there and tell him, you got to start to sit down one day a week and organize your week. And once we told him that, it just took off, just to sit down and organize. Yeah.
And that's a really
There
powerful tool. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, that's a really powerful tool, because I think it's easy to fall into a trap where you just kind of fall through life, just kind of like you're on a boat just riding a wave, rather than driving yourself through life. And that organization is really key for that.
Yeah, and there seems to be a trend where, for so many years, people especially men, you see men that have let themselves go, that they get into this whole concept of what a dad bod is, and they say, well, as I get older, I just need to fall into this. And so, but the people that are succeeding at any area of life right now are the ones that are organizing their lives around their health and fitness. They're getting in better shape, and that becomes the vehicle for organization and everything else in life. But confidence is one of those things, as we mentioned before. It doesn't come immediately, because you're looking in the mirror and you might be seeing the same person that was there 6 months ago, even though you have a new body that's looking back at you in the mirror, right? Talk a little bit, Justin. I know you coach a lot of people. What are some of the biggest challenges that are the biggest internal struggles that you see with your clients right now? Whether it's getting started or gaining the momentum, what's the biggest internal struggle that you're finding?
Well, I'll take it from the client who's kind of new, because I have a mix of clients. Roughly half my clients are long-term competitive bodybuilders. They've been in and out of the sport. They have them are coaches themselves. And then there's this dichotomy of this other group where not every coach does this, but I'll work with anyone who's interested and motivated to work with me. If I have openings and you want to work with me, that's my only requirement. I don't care if you're a pro athlete, if you're a pro bodybuilder, if you're a top amateur. A lot of coaches care about that. I just want to work with people who are motivated. But the thing, like like you say, motivation, the motivation, it doesn't come first. Motivation is the second thing. You have to get the ball rolling. It's like, people who are in shape, it's easy to stay in shape because you have that ball rolling. You don't want to change that. You don't want to ruin all that work you put in, So the better shape you're in, it's actually easier to stay in shape, because now, like, you don't want to eat that piece of cake, because it's like, geez, I did a lot of work to get here. That cake's not that good. And conversely, it's like Newton's law, an object in motion stays in motion, object in rest will stay at rest, And so you get a person who's never exercised and is out of shape. That's very difficult to transition out of that, because you can say you're going to be motivated, but 4 a.m. cardio, that motivation doesn't stick. You could be motivated to go into bed, but when that alarm goes off, that motivation doesn't do that. What happens is you have to just get up and do it, and then the progress creates the motivation. And that's the hardest part, is you have to get over that hump to where the motivation happens. The motivation isn't at the start. And I think that's the biggest thing, is people who aren't in this sport or have never really worked hard to make progress at something, they always talk about motivation and they think that's the thing they're missing. It's like, no one has motivation. What the motivation comes from the progress. The progress creates and brews motivation. And once you put together 50, 60, 5 a.m. cardio sessions, and now you have a set of abs, now the motivation is to continue that, and so that's when the motivation happens. That first day when you're 300 pounds, you have hundreds of cardio sessions ahead before you're going to see abs, it's not going to be motivation at 5 a.m.
No, I don't think motivation wakes up until later in the day, right?
Yeah.
I started getting up at 4 a.m, and I would get up to read before I go to the gym. And I found over time that there's this little voice that's always there at 4 a.m. that says, "Hey, the bed's warm. You should stay in there. No, today should be a quote rest day. You should skip the gym." And what happened is, at a certain point, I don't really remember when it was, but at a certain point, that voice just stopped showing up.
Yeah.
But there was never a replacement voice. There was never this like super motivated voice. The motivation never like showed up at 4 a.m. It was just a sense of discipline. So how do you help people, Justin? When you've got somebody that is overweight, and maybe they're significantly overweight, or maybe they're only 10 to 20 pounds overweight, how do you get them started? How do you get them past that initial hurdle to where they can start seeing results and they start feeling the motivation?
Well, the most important thing is they have to believe that what we're doing is going to work, And the nice thing with nutrition is that it does work. It follows the laws of physics, follows the laws of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, meaning So energy is conserved. The conservation of energy is one of the most important laws of physics. Every physicist for the last 150 years has tried to disprove the law of conservation of energy because that would allow things like time travel. I mean, it would be the biggest breakthrough in human history. You would immediately win the Nobel Prize, and you'd immediately be the world's first trillionaire, because if you can create energy from nothing, we no longer have to mine oil, use electricity, or we can just snap our fingers and have unlimited energy. That's what the creation of energy means. And all a calorie is a measure of energy. It's the amount of energy it takes to raise 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. And so that's how our body works. Our body is just a thermodynamic system. You input X amount of energy, and that's how much energy is there. And so if X is now in my body, either I burn that off, or if I don't, whatever's remaining stays in the body. However, I have stored energy in the body. I have stored body fat stores, I've stored glycogen stores, even muscle stores are a source of energy. And so if I eat X amount of energy, but I burn X plus 10 energy, that 10 has to come from energy reserves in the body, which is typically body fat. And when you explain this, and so when you really understand how and why nutrition works and you explain it to the client, it gives them a sense of, okay, this is going to be hard. I'm not going to enjoy this, but I know absolutely that if I follow it, I will reach the results. And then from there, it's just trying to get them over that hump to where, like we were talking about before, where the motivation starts brewing.
So wait a minute, you're saying that there's an actual science to this, and there's not some sort of voodoo pills, and
and which is so unfortunate. Yeah.
So nutrition, and I know I'm joking about this, but I mean, this is the stuff people believe, right?
Yeah.
But somehow there is no science behind nutrition and weight loss, and so that's why you see another diet and another diet and another diet or another pill pop up onto the marketplace, and people believe it, unfortunately. So talk about how you get people to that state of belief. What does it take to break some of those old beliefs? But I heard that this diet works, or I heard that thing works. I heard that it's not thermodynamics and calories in, calories out. I heard that it's this. So what do you do to get people over that initial hurdle?
Well, the easy thing is we use thermodynamics for everything else in our life. You have a vehicle, you have a car, you fill it with gas. You put 20 gallons of gas in, that's all the gas you get to use, And we're the same way, only instead of one gas tank, we have 3 separate gas tanks. We have a gas tank that we can store body fat. So first we store glycogen, like carbohydrates, in the muscle, and that's our small gas tank. And when that gets filled up, then that gas spills over into other areas, which would be like body fat. And then if you exercise the body, some excess calories will be stored as muscle tissue, which is how we store proteins. So you explain that. I mean, we use that everything. If you live in the boonies like I do, you have a propane tank. That's how much energy you get, and you got to fill it back up. You don't get to, when the propane tank's empty, you don't get to cook food. And so the human body's, and people might not want to believe that, but you say, like, you can look at it logically and say, okay, what does it mean if that's not true? What does it mean if we input this amount of energy, but somehow if we eat X amount of energy, but somehow we store more, than we ate? What does that mean? That's the same thing as saying that, I pumped 10 gallons of gas in, but I actually got 20 gallons of gas. That's not true. And so, it's hard for people. Analogy. Yeah. And it's hard for people to really believe, because this industry feeds so many lies. I mean, it's embarrassing, but then you can also just say that if you really don't believe it, just look where the money is. How much money does big oil make? How much money is there in nuclear power? How much money is there in windmill electric? All of those things are removed the second these laws don't apply. And so if they didn't apply, believe me, someone would have jumped on it, because money rules everything. And if there's any way to create free, I mean, that's what every, like the Large Hadron Collider, that's what they're all looking for. They're trying to violate the law of conservation of energy. That's the entirety of physics at this point, is high energy physics trying to violate those laws. They cannot do it, and which makes sense, because you can't put 10 gallons of gas in your car and get 20 gallons of gas. You can only put 10 gallons in.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I'm with you 100%, but people out there have been told over and over and over that this pill, this diet, this thing is going to work for them. And so in the nutrition industry, it's been so bastardized, and far too many people have a really difficult time understanding these basic scientific concepts. So talk about what are some techniques that you're using to convince people that this works? Is it just a matter of, hey, trust me until you start to see
No,
results?
definitely not.
Doing?
Definitely not. Trust me. No, I asked them to ask questions. I said, you get unlimited questions. This only works if you believe it as much as I do, or, at least, I'll understand it. You have to believe it. But so ask a question, and when you really break it down, they're all immediately obvious questions. It's like, well, pick a diet, the grapefruit diet. Well, why does that work? Or why does like a fast work? Like, I lost 6 pounds. Okay, that's great. Now think of how we store energy in the body. There's 3,500 calories in a pound of fat. So you did a juice diet or whatever this diet was for 5 days. And if we calculated out how many small amount of calories you had from this basically fasting diet and what your basal metabolic rate, we learned that you maybe burned 7,000 calories. So that's 2 pounds of fat. So, okay, that's great. Then why are you down 10 pounds? Well, because weight is different than body composition, different than body fat. 70% of our body is water. So the weight is water. That's the hardest thing to get people to understand, is because your weight, anytime you step on the scale, you're measuring your water level, because to burn 2 pounds of fat, you have to be in 1,000 calorie deficit 7 days in a row. It's a huge deficit. That's just to burn 2 pounds of fat. To gain 2 pounds of weight, all you got to, I'm drinking this with my energy drink. I'm drinking my energy drink. That's going to be, this is 2 pounds, So I've gained 2 pounds since I started drinking this. That's weight. That's different than fat, And so you explain to them how water weight can go up and down. And and a lot of times, even like the women sometimes will insist that, well, I don't care. I just want to lose weight. I'll say, well, that's great. I can get 30 pounds off you in the next 36 hours. Oh, that's great. But it's not weight, it's water. So the second you drink any water, the second you eat any sodium, the second you have any food, you're going to gain it all back and more, because you're going to balloon up in water weight, which is going to make you panic even more, because you lost 30 pounds in 3 days and now you've gained 40 pounds in 5 days. You explain all, you just have to go through and explain all those things. And then, because that's the truth. That's what all those gimmicks try to do, is they just try to manipulate water, because that's the only thing you can manipulate and induce change in the short term. And so when people track their weight, they track it every day, or some people weigh themselves like 3 times a day. It's like their weight goes up and down like that. Yeah, because that's water, So if you're on a 1 pound per week fat loss diet, which is a 500 calorie per day deficit, your fat loss trend is going to be like this, it's going to be linear, perfectly linear, because there's really pretty minimal adaptations to metabolic processes in response to, hypocaloric diets. But underneath that, you're going to have your water weight's going to fluctuate. So your weight here this week, you could have lost this much fat, but your water weight went up. You gained weight that week, and now you're in a panic. And so maybe you do something silly and you cut out sodium that week. Then you plummet like this. Well, the thing is, when you cut out sodium actually works like an androgen in the body. The body is actually better at oxidizing fatty acids for energy when it's hydrated. So sodium's almost like a fat burner, which is counterintuitive because it causes water retention. So you cut out sodium, so your fat loss stops that week. You actually burn less fat that week, but your weight drops way down. So now they think they did something. But if you follow them long enough, they'll see, that basically you're on this linear trend with these error bars based on your natural water variation, and at the end of the day, the natural water variation of any given day is about equal to the fat loss you'll have in a pretty strong calorie deficit per month. So you have to understand and try, even if you don't fully understand the science, you have to trust it on some level, like by correlating to things like, your gasoline tank or whatever, to trust that, because if you don't, you're going to get sucked in that trap of weighing yourself and seeing that your weight fluctuates, all these things, because it takes a month of fat loss before you can even guarantee that you won't weigh more on any given day due to water retention than you did a month ago. And that's the hardest thing.
Yeah, which I think it's an extremely important thing for people to understand. A couple of things that I heard here. First, you've got to delineate between fat loss and weight loss, right? People that are trying to look better, it's not just about losing weight, it's about losing body fat so that you can see the muscle underneath. Go back to what you just said earlier. That's the first time I've heard that. The tie between hydration and fat loss. You said something about your hydration level and your fat loss and what that correlation looks like.
Well, I mean, as someone, I'm 270 pounds. I can wake up one morning and be 260, 262, and I could eat, a day with a bunch of, kind of junky food, eat too much sodium. Maybe I was dehydrated the day before and I drink a lot of water that day, and I might be 278 the next day, so that's 262 to 278. That's a big difference. I can only lose at my size, I can lose about 3 pounds of fat a week, which is a 1,500 calorie a day deficit. So I've just, like, what's that difference? Like 16 pounds, So, so it would take me, at 3 pounds a week times 4. So even then, that's 12 pounds of fat I can lose in a month. But I can gain or lose 16 pounds at the extreme of water retention in any given day. So, so that you just have, you'll have this. When I ask people to track their weight, we look for long-term trend lines, and you can't. I use photos to gauge body fat changes because that's what actually shows the body fat. But we track weight also, and clients will panic when their weight goes up or weight doesn't do what they want. But we track it long term, and you work with someone for 6 months, and you see when you take all those data points and smooth it out, you basically get a very linear line where there's the error bar of water weight changes. But that error bar is such that you have this long bar like this. If you take the extreme low here and the extreme high of water retention a month later, they're the same level. So you could potentially weigh the same weight, for a month from January 1st and January 31st, despite losing fat that whole week. But over time, with those error bars average out.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I've never thought about it like that, but that makes a lot of sense with that fluctuation in weight. Justin, talk a little bit about the things that you have people track. I'm a big believer in tracking. That's the only way I've been able to get results in my own personal fitness, and I track a lot of different things. What do you have people track as they go through their change and their transformation?
Yeah, well, you have to track. I mean, you don't have to, but it's really just dumb luck. That's like driving your car with a broken gas tank or gas gauge.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it technically, but you're going to get stranded at some point. You need to know, because it's a mathematical formula: 3,500 calories for a pound of fat. So whatever your basal metabolic rate is, we need to, over some period of time, get 3,500 calories less than that to burn a pound of fat, which is 500 calories a day for a 7-day week. So if you have to track that, if you don't, you're just guessing, and you're not going to get any linear progress. With what I'm doing, and we say you are on this trend line. It looks like you've lost 1.5 pounds of fat. We're trying to maybe drop 2 pounds of fat. I thought we were at a 1,000 calorie per day deficit, but it appears we're only at an 800 calorie per day deficit. So now I can remove 200 calories. That's it, and reach back that deficit. So I have people track. I actually focus mostly on macronutrients. So I have people track, and with a food list: protein per meal, carb per meal, fat per meal, and they're very specific amounts. And I don't really have them track calories, and I don't have them track indirect macronutrients. Meaning, if you're eating, like, if the meal has chicken breast, even though the chicken has, like a 0.5 gram of carbohydrates and is sort of muscle glycogen, and it might have 4 grams of fat or something, I don't count those, because all our protein sources have fat in them. And my food list will be such that the protein sources are all within the natural variation of each other in the indirect macronutrients like fat. Meaning that when you see a food label that says chicken and it says 4 grams of fat, that doesn't mean that chicken is 4 grams of fat. That chicken was a living creature. That's like saying, the average human is 15% body fat. If we ate human meat, it would be 85-15, but certainly every human on earth isn't 15% body fat, just like every chicken isn't the same. Those numbers came about, in the mid 90s, when the FDA decided they had to do food labels, and you take this bomb calorimetry method where you get a bunch of chicken breasts from some local farm, and you do the bomb calorimetry, and you basically get the rough average of that group of chickens at that time. But that doesn't mean every chicken is the same. So that you might get a particularly lean chicken that was only 1.8 grams of fat. And the next time you might get a particularly fat chicken that was like 5.4 grams of fat. Well, now I do 96.4 beef would be another food on my food list. 96.4 beef will have more fat than chicken on average. But if you get, the same thing, that's not synthesized in a lab. It's not a pharmaceutical company. They're grinding up, cow parts. They're finding the lean parts, cutting the fat off, and they're doing their best. But it's not like it's, like chemists doing it. So you might get a particularly lean chunk of 96.4 that's leaner than the chicken. And so if we try to over count and like just get too precise and over analyze everything, what you end up doing is you're counting things up beyond the natural variation in your methodology. So you actually lose accuracy. You add all this complication and lose accuracy. So what I have people do is just macros from a food list. You get 30 grams of protein, 25 grams of carbs, 7 grams of added fat from these sources per meal or whatever.
So there's an accuracy piece to it, but at the same time, if I'm hearing you right, you're giving yourself some room for variation in it because
Well,
of the
there is
variation
variation.
in
Yeah.
natural
Yeah.
food. Yeah.
And then another example, to use an analogy, it's like if you've ever worked in an office setting and someone does the calculation in Excel, and it's like maybe it's a measurement, like I need this part machined, and I do some calculation and it gives me an answer to 700 decimal places. That's smaller than the size of a proton inside of an atom. No machine can measure it that accurate. Just because the numbers are there doesn't mean that you have to know your level of accuracy. And your level of accuracy with these sources is there's a range. Every chicken's a little bit different. So you basically get a bell curve. You have your chicken breast, the fat distribution is like this. We assume it's always in the middle, but it's somewhere there. Your 96.4 is like this, slightly shifted a little higher fat, but 40% of the 96.4 ground beef is going to be leaner than 40% of the time the lean ground beef is going to be leaner than the chicken. 60% of the time it's going to be fattier. So it's technically fattier, but it's not that big of a difference. And then you get turkey breast, same thing. 40% of the time it's going to be leaner than the chicken, but 60% of the time it won't be, or what, you know what I mean? Vice versa. And so you have these bell curves, and what you want to do is remove the complicated things, remove the excessive tracking that doesn't do anything to improve your measurements, because we have this range, and so that range of that bell curve is that's as accurate as we can get. If I restrict you to this fine line right in the middle, we have all this stuff that's just introducing inaccuracies in the plan for no reason and making your life harder, where you're measuring your chicken breast out to like 168.2 grams or whatever, because it does nothing, because we can't know beyond a certain range. So my measurements for protein go in chunks of 5 grams of protein per food source. So like 30 grams of protein from chicken breast or from whatever the food list says. My carbohydrates also typically go in 5 gram increments. My fats go a little bit weird because you have to, like, fat sources are weird. There's only so many pure fat sources, like oils, olive oils, macadamia nut oil. And then there's nuts that are mostly fat, almonds. There's, avocado. Well, the interesting thing with those is those tend to go in like 7, 10, 14, 21 grams. A tablespoon of oil is usually 14 grams of fat. Half an avocado is 10 grams of fat. A quarter ounce of nuts is 14 grams of fat. A tablespoon of peanut butter is 7 grams of fat. So those, oddly enough, I do in like chunks of like 3, basically, like 7, 10, 14, 17, 21. But that's the level of accuracy that we can actually trust our accuracy. Trying to go more precise than that, we get more inaccurate trying to be more accurate.
That's pretty fascinating. So talk a little bit about, here's the science of it, and we're breaking down the macronutrients. Where do you bring into the equation people's enjoyment of food, flavor, the things that they enjoy eating? Does that play into when you're creating a nutrition plan for somebody?
Yeah, the food doesn't have to taste bad. Seasoning's great. And like we talked about earlier, salt actually helps the fat loss. It does. One of the aldosterone is the hormone that adjusts sodium levels in the body. A product that you'll be given if you're in like heart failure or potentially for high blood pressure to lower your sodium levels in the body that works on aldosterone is a product called aldactone. One of the side effects in men of aldactone is actual gynecomastia, like breast growth.
Oh.
Yeah, because sodium actually works similarly to an androgen in the body, and you want that androgenic look. That's that lean, muscular, thin skin, low body fat look. So restricting sodium, it seems great because for 3 days you flush out a bunch of water, but then you stay there forever. And anytime you even look at sodium, you get all bloated again. If we keep sodium high for 3 days, you hold extra water, and then you go back to baseline, and then you can eat all the salt, all the seasoning, all the hot sauce, anything you want, and with no fluctuation in body weight. So that's what I do. I encourage any 0-calorie seasoning, which there are a lot of. Pretty much every dry seasoning, every salt, every powder, every rub is almost always 0 calories. Every hot sauce is almost always 0 calories or very near to 0 calories. Balsamic vinegar is nearly 0 calories. Red wine vinegar is nearly 0 calories. There's a whole line of 0-calorie sauces and seasonings on top of that. And so that's why I say, your food might not be amazing, like a deep fried Twinkie tastes great, but there's a range of food, like your food might not be the greatest thing you've ever ate, but it's not going to taste bad, and so if you like to go through and the reason why is because what tastes good to us is what lets us survive. You know, it's only been a phenomenon of the last few hundred years where there's been abundance of food year round. For most of human existence, you know, you had to find the most calorie dense foods possible because you didn't know when the next time you're going to eat, and the next time you ate was going to come from a period of a lot of work. And we were actually persistence hunters early on in our evolution. Persistence hunt, one of the so a couple things the humans are better at than anything, you know, until our minds became better than every other animal on earth, until we were able to use our intelligence, what we were able to do better than other animals is our gait. A bipedal gait is very low energy consumption. And we have a very high surface area to body volume, and we sweat. You know, so you take an animal that pants to release heat, you know, like a dog, they don't really sweat, they release most of the heat through their tongue. That's a very small surface area. They have their tongue to reduce heat, to evaporate heat off the body. We have our whole body to evaporate heat through sweat. And our motion is very low energy. So the way we hunted before we developed spears and stuff, since this is for, you know, potentially 100,000 years, is we literally just chased animals until they died of heat exhaustion and then ate them, because we would survive after they would have died. And so throughout human history, that's how we got food. We only got to eat when we ran until another animal died of exhaustion. And so what allows you to survive for that? High fat foods, high sugar foods. And so we grew to develop a taste for animal fat, oils, fat, organ meat, and fruit, things that were very, very calorie dense. So that's the problem we have to get around, is we've had a few hundred years to try to work through, a few 100,000 years of human evolution, and that's not going to happen. So what tastes good to us is still the foods that are extremely high calories. So you can't fight that too much. You can work around it. Hot sauce tastes good, salsa tastes good, seasoning tastes good, rubs taste good. And, like a ribeye might be a great cut. I mean, a good ribeye is pretty tough to beat, but a flank steak properly seasoned, it doesn't taste bad. It's pretty darn good too. Like if a ribeye is a 10, a flank steak's like an 8.5, maybe a 9 if you really nail their cooking. So you might not be eating like Wolfgang Puck, but you're not eating, you don't have to eat junk food. I'm not making you eat boiled chicken breast. I'm not making you eat unseasoned rice. We're seasoning the crap out of our food.
Well, and there's something to be said too for this idea of eating the right foods to get the body that you want. And so you're maybe making a trade-off from a 10 to an 8.5, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm with you 100% there. One of the things that I noticed a few years ago, I had some health issues and I'd put on more body fat than I was used to. And what happened was I felt horrible. And as I got my body fat lower and lower, I started to feel so much more vibrant. I started to feel like I had energy and vitality. And sure, I'm not eating, not that I ever ate any fried Twinkies, but I'm not eating those types of junk food. And so it's almost like you push aside those momentary pleasures that you think taste good and that you think are rewards, or they feel good in the moment. But then the lower the body fat gets, the less appetizing those things are. Talk about, I heard on a recent or on a podcast, I don't know how recent it was recent to me because I just listened to it. You were talking about body fat percentage in man and why that's so important to how they feel and also their muscle growth. Talk a little bit about the ranges that you recommend people get into when they're trying to build muscle and be at their optimal level.
Well, I want to touch real quickly on what you were kind of saying leading up to that, and that's like delayed gratification. And everyone knows delayed, but the important thing to understand, and I think, and I try to teach my kids this, is that in anything you do, the best future you that's related to that thing almost always comes from doing the thing you don't want to do right now. If you're an 18-year-old kid right now, what is it, Saturday? You want to go out and party, that's what you want to do. But if you do, that's all you do. In 20 years, yes, every Saturday you'll be out partying, but you're going to have a shit job. I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to swear. You're going to have a crappy job. You're going to have a miserable life. You're going to be struggling for money. You're going to be struggling financially. You're going to have relationship issues, and so that's for anything you do. If you at any moment in time, if you were doing the thing you don't want to do, it's not like it's the terrible thing, but there's a wide range. You want to lay on the couch, you want to watch TV, but if you go and do work on a book or whatever you're working on, you do the thing you don't want to do right now, then in the future, you're still going to be doing things you don't want to do in that moment. But 20 years from now, You could be doing the thing you want to do, which is getting drunk and living in a crappy home with no money and a miserable relationship life. Or you could be doing the thing you don't want to do in a beautiful home with a beautiful family, financially secure, with your health. And that's like an important thing to realize is like what's good in the moment is almost always bad long term. And then as far as like with
so let's pause right there for just a
yep.
second, and then I want to come to the next point because you bring up a point that we can't say enough, right? This delayed gratification, this idea that if we pause gratification now, we're going to have a much better life. If we lean into gratification over and over again, then we're going to develop a really shitty life. And what I found is that when you are the type of person that lives in this delayed gratification mindset, and you push that into your life over and over and over again, when you get around the people that are not living in that space, not only are you totally different from them, but you almost get ridiculed by them.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, I can't tell you the number of people when I go to work and I pull out my food and I've got it all prepped and it's ready, and people will make fun of me for packing my food, and then they'll come rolling back in from slamming a burger or a bunch of diarrhea making food that they went out to eat it for lunch. And it's almost like it becomes this battle between those that are striving for excellence because of this concept of delayed gratification, and those that are just trying to live in the moment of I want it right now. Talk about this tribal feel, because I know you live in a space where there's a lot of people that are super healthy, that are striving and improving, and you're in the health and fitness space. What are you noticing? Is it the same thing in your world that it is in mine?
Yeah. No one will care. No one on earth wants you to eat that candy bar as much as someone who's eating a candy bar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's hilarious.
Misery
But the
loves
thing is,
company.
very good. Yeah, crabs in a bucket. Yeah, but I mean, I hate to use myself as an example because it's not like, like no one's life is perfect. Everyone's, got issues and stuff. And it's not like, anything of mine is better or more special than anyone else. But, you can look at people maybe you hung out with, as a 20-year-old who were more the instant gratification type people. And they were a riot, and maybe you were frustrated. I can think back to times because when we first got married, like when I was prepping for the Mr. Michigan, I trained in the morning at 4:30 a.m. because I had to be to work at 7. I was an exercise physiologist. I worked there, and so like on Fridays, because I bounced also for extra money. On Fridays, I'd be up at 4:30 in the morning, work a full day, and then I'd come home, do cardio, and then I'd go right to work at the nightclub. Where if there was a fight or anything, I want to get home to 4:30 in the morning. So those were 24-hour days, as a young kid on a weekend, and it felt like you'd think like, is this worth it? Because the kids that would go out and have, but and I don't like, it's hard to say this because people choose their own life, and I don't think, I don't want to knock what anyone else is doing, but like last night I was working pretty late on a Friday, on our new supplement company. My partner Joe Miller and I were, like grinding, but it's fun, because we're building a new business, and it's exciting and it's scary, and you're going into debt, and it's like, if this doesn't work, but it's like I look around, it's like, I live in a beautiful home on a private lake. I hear my kids giggling, baking cookies or whatever with their mom. I hear them watching Beetlejuice in the theater. And I'm like, I'm in my office overlooking like, a beautiful property over our lake. And yes, I'm working, I'm not out at the bar getting drunk, but it's like, this is my thing I don't want to do now. But my thing I don't want to do now is amazing, where if I would have taken another route, yes, I'd be getting drunk, but I'd be still living in some crappy apartment in Detroit, Michigan. And I'd be partying on Friday night with my buddies. I have no money. I want to have all this amazing things I have. And so that's a perfect example, because right at that moment I was doing the thing I don't want to do, but that thing I didn't want to do was amazing and so much better than the thing I would have wanted to do had I followed that instant gratification route.
Yeah, so let's come back to the tribal thing, it's a great perspective. I appreciate you sharing that. What do you see when you start to get into your clients are getting into better shape and they're losing body fat, and they start to find other people that are around them that will help and support them, because ultimately I think that's what you've got to do, right? But what ranges do you recommend that people get into so that they can have the long-term results? I mean, what does that look like, and why is body fat percentage so important?
For men, it's most important because we produce testosterone, and our other hormones are kind of as a result of the testosterone. And men are typically most anabolic, meaning the highest testosterone levels, lowest estrogen levels, highest insulin sensitivity at around 8 to 12% body fat, which if you look at any, like, there aren't really many, there's only a handful on earth anymore. But if you look at like tribes and things that never had like modern things, that's what every man walks around at, and that's kind of what your natural instincts to hunt, and where your hunger level gets high enough that you'll go out and pick berries and you'll stop eating the nuts when you're that will keep you at that range. And so if you eat basic foods and basically live a vigorous life and eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full, that's where you'll end up. And the reason that's important, and I'll use a case study, is like any guy who grown up and in their 20s had a buddy who was pretty overweight, his early 20s or something. So obviously post puberty, gone through puberty, but he didn't have a full beard, like a neck beard. There's even like a meme, like, the overweight guy with a neck beard, not very much chest hair, maybe kind of like breast growth looks like, And so why is that? Well, it's because at that high body fat levels, one, that their body produces less testosterone. So, the hair growth and stuff. So they have less testosterone to begin with. And testosterone is very important for body composition. It's the reason men have higher muscle mass and lower body fat than women naturally. Two, they aromatize more of the testosterone they do produce to estrogen. So they're producing less testosterone, and more of that is converting to estrogen, which is why women have a naturally higher body fat level, because it's like a requirement for the ability to give birth and survive childbirth. And then also you have reduced insulin sensitivity. So, like if you look at insulin, like insulin is it's a receptor on every cell in the body. And I always picture it like this, because picture insulin as like a ball that fits in that receptor. It hits that receptor, shuffles some proteins around, and then that basically opens like a drain that allows nutrients into the cell, amino acids, carbohydrates, and that's what drives like the storage of all the nutrients we eat. Well, like what type 2 diabetes is you have so much insulin over time, it kind of beats up those receptors, and pretty soon they're like, the receptor doesn't really fit in there very well, so it doesn't lock in, it goes to the next one, and you lose that sensitivity, and then blood sugar levels start climbing. When you have a double effect, because blood sugar levels are climbing, you always have that available energy source. Why are you going to burn stored body fat when there's always an available blood sugar source for energy? And two, you're not doing the things with the insulin that promotes muscle growth. Insulin, when it binds to a cell, increases amino acid uptake to that cell, which will, if there's a stimulus for muscle protein synthesis, that's more likely to occur. You're going to store more muscle glycogen to provide a better source for energy. So you lose all those things. So as a man, and I think, like you see the testosterone epidemic in America, or worldwide. I don't even know if it's worldwide, it's definitely in America, but men have plummeting testosterone levels. And, obviously it has something to do with the foods we eat. It's something to do with the fact that we don't exercise and we don't do any, like, not saying this should be encouraged, but we don't do anything fighting or aggressive or anything that would induce like a testosterone surge in the body. We aren't fighting for survival. We're not hunting with a knife. We're not, beating each other up for the right to mate. And we have chronically high body fat levels. So, and that's, everything is just fighting against, you're not even giving yourself a fighting chance at that point.
Yeah, body fat is everything. I mean, it really makes all the difference in the world, because that's where the testosterone is going to be built, at that lower body fat. I love those different aspects that you're talking about. With not only is it low body fat, but we aren't living a life where we have to fight for a mate. We're not living a life that we have to fight for certain things. We're living in this world where everything is so homogenized. I walked down out of the bedroom this morning, and I felt that it was a little bit colder than normal, and I talked to Siri, and I told Siri to raise the temperature 2 degrees. And I thought to myself as I walked away, that is the wimpiest thing in the world.
I just changed the temperature on my house on my phone. I was like, I'm a little toasty. Let me lower it 1 degree. Yeah, we have just tolerance, no tolerance for discomfort. Yeah.
And so even people like us that are trying to live this super healthy life, we're using technology as a way to make ourselves so comfortable. But I don't know that our bodies were designed to do that, right? I mean, our ancestors had fires, and they would warm up their tents or their homes that way, and our bodies adapted to that.
There actually is a very important aspect of that, brown adipose tissue. So most animals have a highly active brown adipose tissue. I have a funny story about that also, publishing a paper, but humans really don't. And I'll tell the story because it'll lead into it. So around 2007 or 2008, I wrote an article on brown adipose tissue in humans and used gamma-linolenic acid as a metabolic uncoupler to activate brown adipose tissue. Now it's not, like you can get that in like borage oil, evening primrose oil, and there's not enough to really create a stimulus for it. But there are things like chlorohydrobiotin, I think, can work through acetyl-CoA carboxylase 2, which can kind of induce this whole pathway. And the article got shut down. I won't say the website or the magazine, but they said it was too theoretical. And I was so mad because in 2009, Discover magazine listed the 100 greatest discoveries of science in 2009. And one of them was active brown adipose tissue in humans, which I was arguing. I mean, I didn't have any research to support it. It wasn't like I was saying like, if this is in humans, this would work. But it was, anyways, we don't have.
Right? Yeah. Usually clinicians are ahead of the curve. I remember a guy that I used to follow and learned a lot from early in my coaching career was Charles Poliquin. And Poliquin would say a lot of things that people just thought, oh, that guy's crazy. And then 5 years later, everybody was jumping on board and they're like, oh yeah, you need to do this. Oh, you need to do that. Anyway.
Yeah. And so, I mean, so like some of those things are important because we used to have that. And when it was cold, we would and so the way brown adipose tissue works is the metabolic uncoupling is a proton gets driven in the mitochondria, and the mitochondria releases its energy as heat rather than converting it to ATP. So it's not usable energy, it's just heat energy, which is great when you don't have a fur coat like humans didn't have, we didn't have housing. So in the winter, like your dog goes outside, you don't put a coat on him. If it gets too cold, he'll activate some more brown adipose tissue. All we have is shivering, and you know how uncomfortable that is. That's terrible, right. And it's really inefficient. And so we basically comforted ourselves away from a very active fat metabolizing process that humans used to have. And we just put ourselves behind the 8 ball. Like, if we were playing snooker, we'd be the greatest enemy of ourselves.
We're changing our fat to be non-fat burning. By putting that big jacket on. Yes, that's pretty fascinating that you'd written that article. Talk about some of these other activities. You referenced before fighting to raise testosterone. So obviously, dropping body fat is going to be one of the most important things that men can do to increase their testosterone. What are some of the other important factors for increasing testosterone, whether they be lifestyle or nutrition factors? What would you recommend that men do?
Living a vigorous life, for one. I mean, I think Teddy Roosevelt said that, he always talked about the vigorous life. And I kind of like that term because, doing things that, like aggressive doesn't have to mean punching someone, do things that are aggressive, go climb something, go on a hike, go for a run, go, play flag football with your buddies, go try to push, push a sled, pull the prowler, go train with weights, do something that, there's a very strong human instinct, there's a reason we get endorphins from those things. There's a reason there's a runner's high, that's those are beneficial things to the human body. And so go out and exert yourself seriously. And then as far as food, the weird thing is it's like the food pyramid and stuff, we just so completely destroyed humans and nutrition by basically, when the food pyramid came out, it was, if you were diabolical and you put people in a room and said, okay, let's design the absolute worst way to eat food to create the highest level of obesity, the lowest hormone levels, the lowest reproductive rates, the lowest testosterone levels in men, and basically the highest rates of depression we could possibly manage. We need to do this. I won't, it's 1988 or whenever that came out. By the year 2015, I want everyone to be miserable. You couldn't have designed a better plan for that than the food pyramid. What's so funny is it's so engraved. People who don't understand anything about nutrition will argue on behalf of grains and processed carbohydrates because they don't know any better. And even nutritionists will, and they'll argue against meat and healthy fats. Hormone production comes from fat. Omega-6 fatty acids like arachidonic acid is directly anabolic. Arachidonic acid is omega-6 fatty acid. Testosterone is produced from cholesterol. Cholesterol converts to androstenedione, which converts to testosterone. So, and you think about partly the reason our grandpas were walking around with test levels higher than the average 18-year-old kid right now, they went out, they chopped wood, it's funny, my family were farmers, generations ago, and at my great aunt Phyllis's house, there's a bunch of old generational photos, and it's It's hilarious because the husband, it's always a photo of the husband and wife. They have like one family photo. It's like the turn of the century. And the husband is just like shredded. He looks jacked. He's only like 140 pounds, but he's like sinewy and grainy. His jawline's just like he's like like Giga Chad grandpa. And then the mom's always like really obese. And it's because she worked in the house cooking, and they ate high fat, high protein meat food sources. So he's out chopping wood because of like a wood fire stove. They heat their house with wood. He's out working the fields, working the farm all day, eating meat, eating bacon, eating animal fat. And I'm not encouraging you to eat high levels of saturated fat. I'm just saying these are what produce testosterone levels. So he goes out there, he lives a vigorous life. And go find a photo of your great grandpa. Go find a photo of any of those people over, with high body fat levels. Even go back to photos of Woodstock, even 1969. Find a fat guy at Woodstock. They're not. Everyone's walking around with abs. I mean, they got no muscle mass because their weight training wasn't involved yet. But even up till that point, we hadn't got to where we are now. But those are the things that produce testosterone. Healthy fat. I mean, unfortunately, some unhealthy fats required also. Cholesterol is a direct precursor for testosterone, and I mean, animal sources of protein. And that sounds crazy. And you could even make the argument that it's not healthy, but you have to remember how long, like, evolution takes a long time. We evolved from creatures that ate animals and vegetables. So we really aren't good at eating vegetables because we can't digest cellulose. A deer will go through the woods and they browse. They eat tree branches. We can't we can only digest a very, very narrow range of vegetable and carbohydrate sources. So like, we have hundreds of thousands of years of our bodies learning to be optimized around animal meat, nuts, and berries. And then we have like 35 years of our bodies trying to be optimized around grains. It's just evolution doesn't happen that fast. I don't think the human species is that much different than it was in 1988.
Well, I love how you talked about the if you were to put together the perfect diet to make people feel depressed and horrible. There was an Audible course that I went through years ago that talked about food and nutrition throughout the history of the world. And one thing that was really common throughout every tribe, every group, was that when people were subjugated, they were subjugated by the way that they ate. So whoever was in power would get them to eat more of these grains, more of the products that were made on the farms, and less meats and the things that you're talking about with living a vigorous life. And that was the easiest way to get people depressed and get people pushed down and be subjugated by that. And so we're in the same mode, right? I mean, we're living in a day where there is so much easy access to quick carbohydrates, to high fat foods that we just that are stripped of the protein and stripped of other nutrients. And it's so easy. I mean, I could pull up my phone right now, and within 20 minutes, I could have, thousands of calories delivered to my door.
That's what I was eating when we started.
Right? Yeah. And so it's super easy. We have this access to it, but it is drawing us back, further and further into this depressive state. So talking a little bit about, Justin, if somebody is in that particular state right now, they're eating poorly, they're overweight, they're depressed, they're not feeling good. Obviously, you can't eat an elephant all at the same time. What's the first step? If a man is sitting here listening to this podcast and they're 30 pounds over the weight, 40 pounds overweight, 50 pounds overweight, and they say, well, that's me. I feel like shit. I've got no energy. I've got this thing called erectile dysfunction, which is just, frankly, a byproduct of low testosterone and being over fat and all of these other things. What's the first step? What do they need to do?
Wait, let me, can I refine that just to have a little fun?
Yeah.
So you have to bring in, without any words, and this is the first time you've met a client, and you're not going to use any words, and you're going to start with nutrition, and you bring in a plate of food and you put it before him or her. What's on the plate?
There you go. Let's start there.
Lean meat, vegetables, and rice.
Okay.
And actually, you said no words, but I would have been able to make it much more concise with 3 words or 3 phrases. Pick it, kill it, grow it. If you can't pick it from a tree, grow it in a garden, or hunt it for meat, don't eat it.
Pick it, kill it, or grow it. Okay. Yeah.
And that's really it. I mean, that's it. you're not going to find, you want to get step one, you're not going to go on My 600-Pound Life and find anyone who just can't stop eating plums, or, no one's been on that show because they can't stop eating asparagus.
I mean, there's to asparagus and berries.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really it, and I've actually I've trademarked that phrase, and I keep intending to write a book, Pick It, Kill It, Grow It, because that's as simple as it is. For you can get 85-90% of the way to The Rock, or like whoever your favorite like physique celebrity is, you can get 85-90% there just by that, not counting anything. Live a vigorous life, exercise, do something daily, and then only eat foods you can pick from a tree, grow in a garden, or hunt for meat. And that's it. But like you said, it's so hard to get started because, like you gave the example, erectile dysfunction. Imagine that guy. Okay, his wife's all frisky. He can't get a boner. It's 11 p.m. He's got to work. He got to get up at 5 a.m, go for work. His life's miserable. So what's the quickest way to solve that problem? Do like 3 or 4 shots of whiskey, grab a beer, and order pizza on Grubhub. Boom. Yeah. And now I feel great. I'm buzzed. I got pizza in my mouth, and that just makes the problem worse. It's that instant gratification, quick fix. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Tell them, be like, hey, I know you couldn't get it up for your wife, but let's get up at 4 a.m. and do cardio. That's hard. So you really have to. It's a big hill to get over, because all the things because it's self-energizing. The side effects of the bad eating and the not living a vigorous life cause you to want to repeat those things, because that's the thing that coddles you, to make you feel a little better for a few moments.
Yeah, comfort always wants to feed itself.
Oh yeah.
That's the title of your second book. You got to get up in order to get it up. So Justin, you said in one of your recent social posts that, and I hope I'm quoting you okay on this, is what matters when you step on stage is that you look the best. There's no moral victory, no pats on the back, and no kisses on the cheek because you suffered more than someone else. That really resonated with me for some reason, because I think sometimes we value hard work and we overvalue extra work and suffering, but yet we're not doing it the right way. And maybe we're restricting calories too much, or we're eating the wrong foods, or whatever. The key is results. Talk a little bit more about what you meant by that.
Well, that's because it's really to get lost in it, because what gets you in amazing shape is hard work. It's hard work, and so it's easy to get lost and to think that the hard work is the goal. The goal is to get in shape. The goal is to improve your health. The goal is whatever the goal is, even if it's pure vanity, just to get abs because you want to get laid, or that's the goal. It just so happens that most of the ways to get there involve pretty hard, intense work. And so it's easy to get lost in that. And I see it all the time with clients where they'll get just so overly depleted. We can see they're completely out of muscle glycogen, and they look terrible. They look skinny fat. Their muscles are so deflated. Their skin's thick because it's like you take a balloon and you shrink it. Suddenly you blow a balloon up, you can almost see all the way through it. So stretched so thin. You flatten it out again. Now it's the walls are thick, and that's what happens. Their skin looks thicker. Their muscles aren't popping. Say, okay, we're going to do a very high carbohydrate day. I want you to eat 1,000 grams of carbohydrates from these sources. Yeah. Oh, no, coach, I can make it. It's like, I know you can. That's not what this is to improve your look. We need to get your glycogen stores back up. We're at risk of losing muscle mass. We're at risk of your metabolism slowing down. This is to improve our results. But they get wrapped up in that, well, I've worked so hard to get here. How on earth could anything other than working even harder get me better? And you get into a real bad rut. And that's the thing that's common across the board with fitness, because you'll see like long distance runners their times will start dropping. They'll, like shin splints, microfractures in their tibia, and their race times will start dropping, but they'll refuse to reduce their training volume, and they've lost the plot. The plot has now become, well, I run a lot, I work harder than anyone, where the plot originally was, I want to be an Olympic champion. I want to be the best runner I can be.
Yeah, and that new identity that they've created for themselves, they've lost the overall objective, and so they lean into the fact that they're the hardest worker in the room. So, talk about when you see clients and everybody reaches a plateau at some point, right? What do you do to help them to break through that plateau?
Well, nearly always the plateau is the fact that you've just depleted muscle glycogen. Someone like the average adult male can store like 750 or 800 grams of glycogen. So a larger bodybuilder, you know, over 1,000 grams, and that's it. That's your bait. That's like your good energy stores. That's the store energy for glycolysis. You know, the energy that you're going to get you through your weight training. You know, we want to burn fat, but fat's like a rough energy source. It produces the most ATP, but your body doesn't like to do it. As soon as it's burning fat, your body starts sending the signals to your body like, hey, we're using up our stored energy. We only have so much of this. I know. I'm guessing there's not any woolly mammoths to kill, or I'm guessing it's not berry season. So I don't want to burn this fat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you feel tired. I'm going to make this energy consumption be exhausting. So there's only so much fat you can burn before you start reaching into that. So what typically causes like the burnout and stuff or the plateaus is it's not like metabolic slowdown or muscle loss. And that's a confusing thing, because that's another fitness thing. Everyone says, you know, you got to eat more to build your metabolism. I wasn't losing weight. I wasn't eating enough. That's absolutely not true. It's patently false. It violates physics. It's so wrong. It's so bad. It's not even wrong. It's like not. It's worse than wrong. But there are things that are going on. Your metabolism hasn't necessarily slowed down. It's that you don't have easy energy. You're only using fat, or now even worse, you're converting proteins to carbohydrates through gluconeogenesis to use for energy, which is another exhaustive process. So you got no easy energy reserves. The only energy you're going to burn is fat, which is great. You think, geez, I'm only going to burn fat. Let's go. Yes, but you're not a robot. You can't just go, because every signal in your body is saying, don't go. You're exhausted. You're tired. You can't think. Your brain's not working. And so 90% of the time, the simple fix is to introduce a high bolus dose of carbohydrates. What I call them high carb days. A day with just a very high carbohydrate intake, very low fat intake, and moderate protein intake. And then another thing often is a lot of people will, even though I can explain the sodium thing to them, they'll get this in their mind that lower sodium is better, because that's another fallacy that gets promoted. And so they'll be depleted in blood sodium levels. And so what happens is your body has to maintain your blood at a 0.9% sodium level. That's like required. So if you eat less sodium and your blood sodium dips to 0.08% or 0.8%, it has to rise it back to 0.9%. Well, if you're not going to eat more sodium to do that, the only way to do that is to pull water from the blood, so another depletion. So now you're dehydrated and you're depleted of glycogen. Yeah, that's great. You're only burning fat at that point, but you're not doing anything. You can't get out of bed. You're exhausted. You're miserable. You're irritable. And so, the way to fix that is bring sodium back in and a large bolus dose of carbohydrates. You fill up with glycogen, your veins will come back. You'll be energized, and you'll be like a new man. And it's like, wow, my metabolism boosted. And I'll fall in the rut of even kind of saying that, because that's what people want. It's like, no, your metabolism didn't increase. It's just now we went from having every evolutionary signal telling you that, because how do you survive a famine? If there are no woolly mammoths to kill, the way to survive is to not use energy, to be motionless, to sit in your cave exhausted and sleep, So yeah, we went from that to now your body's like, oh, we found nuts and berries and a big animal to eat. We got lots of organ meat. Something happened. Let's go. Now, let's get some stuff done.
Yeah, that I love what you're talking about here, Justin. We are coming up on our time, though. I think we gotta have you back on for another conversation, because this is fascinating. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of feedback from our listeners that they want to hear more from you. Final question that we've got for you. So at Evolve, we believe that people evolve their lives by stacking one simple habit on top of another. It doesn't have to be hard to get started, but it's just got to be consistent. What's the most important habit you would want our listeners to build?
I love that, because that's like one of my main mottos is one thing. You have your baseline day. You got to go to work. I try to do, if I can just do one thing to improve myself on top of that, that's 365 things a year. That adds up real quickly. Yeah. But the one thing for me, it's how am I going to word this? Structured progress. Have a goal. It blows my mind that people don't have goals. I see this all the time with like someone want to be a pro bodybuilder. It's like, okay, you need to be 260 pounds fat free at your height to be a pro bodybuilder. You're 160 pounds right now. Now there is a path to that, but if next year you're 162 pounds, there is no path within your lifetime that 2 pounds per year turns into 260. So we have our goal. Always be revisiting things, short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. Like I'm a nutrition coach, and you can make a really good living, and it's a great job. You work from home, you have no scheduled time, and you get to do the thing you love. So people always say, I want to be a coach. That's great. What have you done today? What is your path for that? Short term, like where are your educational weaknesses? Medium term, how have you promoted yourself? Does anyone else on earth know you want to be a coach? Because if they don't, they're not going to sign up. In long term, like what's your long-term plan for growth? Are you going to focus on bodybuilders? You're going to focus on MMA fighters? You're going to focus on general health? And people just, like hard work wins out. Hard work always wins. Hard work is always worth it. And like they say like the traits that predict success, the two most important ones are intelligence, but you don't have much control over that. You're born how you are. But then conscientiousness or hard work. If you work hard, you can achieve just about anything. And people get upset about that because they think they're working hard, but that's the problem. You have to direct that work. It has to be towards the goal. If I'm chopping wood to build a fire, if all I do is cut down trees, I did a lot of work. I don't got any logs to bring into the house. Like you need to focus. It's not like, and people, that's what people do. They're just like, they want something and they think they're working hard for it, but they never step back and take stock and think, am I pointed in the right direction?
Or even asking other people, you have people who could be objective about what you're doing, go to outside sources and say, how do you think I'm progressing? And just get a second opinion to just shed some perspective.
Yeah. And that I think that leads into the next thing. The second most important thing is self-evaluation, and that's a good way to learn, because if you think I've evaluated myself and I think these things about myself and my progress, and I ask this respected person and they say something different, our natural tendency is to say, well, screw him. But you got to think, okay, where am I wrong in my self-evaluation? Because I'm not always gonna, I can only ask him periodically. I can ask myself every second of the day if I'm pointed in the right direction. I trust this guy. He gave me this advice, and if it's different than mine, I need to reflect on that and see where I'm wrong and why my self-assessment was incorrect.
Yeah, we got to ping other people and almost like echolocate, right, with how we're doing within the world. Well, Justin, I appreciate the perspective that you've given us today. And on that note, folks, it is time for us to wrap up another Evolve podcast. I want to thank our guest, Justin Harris, for joining us today, and my co-host, W. Myles Riley. Justin, we've had a great conversation with you today, but I want to make sure that our listeners know what the best way for people to follow your personal evolution and all the great things that you do. How do people get a hold of you, or how do people follow you?
I picked the worst name, but Toponin Nutrition. And I'll say real quickly, Toponin was my handle on website and forums 20 years ago. I went by Toponin or tropomyosin. What that is when a muscle contracts, calcium enters the cell and binds to something called troponin, which moves troponin off of tropomyosin, which allows the myosin and actin cross-bridge heads to interact. And that's the muscular contraction. And so I thought that was cute, when I was like a 20-year-old kid. I was, probably learning that in college. So, but then when I started my business, also 20 years ago as a kid, I didn't think any better. I was like, oh, everyone knows me as Toponin. Let me call it Toponin Nutrition. But Toponin's also the market for a heart attack. So it was probably not but yeah, Toponin Nutrition, or just search Justin Harris Nutrition or Justin Harris Carb Cycling, or you can go to firstdetachment.com, firstdetachmentnutrition.com will also work. And that's my supplement company. And through there, you can reach me also. But really, a Google search for Justin Harrison Nutrition should bring just about everything up.
And we both we looked up the definition of troponin before you got it on.
Yeah, I had to look it up because I knew the word, but I didn't remember what it was. And then after the Google search, I hadn't heard the heart attack piece. I remembered the contractile protein piece. But
yeah, I wish that's the only thing that came up. But yeah, unfortunately, anyone who's had heart problems knows that they go to the doctor to get their troponin levels checked. I'm not heart attack nutrition. Well, hopefully not, anyways.
Right.
It's funny. I just did that like a week ago. I had to go do a nuclear stress test because I'm getting a hip replacement, and the anesthesiologist saw something that was kind of a red flag. Mm-hmm. So I had to go in and do it, and so they did the test, and they found out it was nothing, but it was one of the things they had to look at.
Yeah, I used to do that. Was my first job out of college with stress tests. I was an exercise physiologist doing stress tests, cool. And then stress echoes, which is similar to nuclear. It gives an image, a different type of image. And then I did just the echocardiograms for a while.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, hey, remember, folks, that it does take time and consistency to evolve, but first you have to disrupt. And now it's time for you to get out there and evolve.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve Podcast. If you like this episode, share it with your friends. Follow us on Instagram at evolve_cast and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcasting app. And now it's time for you to get out there and evolve.